You think I stole Patek watch? The maid's words that silenced a billionaire. You stole my Patek watch, didn't you? The words cut through the quiet like a blade. Crystal shattered on marble, and for a second, the entire mansion froze. Liam Hawthorne, one of the richest men in Westchester, stood towering over a maid, barely holding back tears. Elena Morris, 27, exhausted, innocent, looked up at him with trembling hands and whispered, "He didn't." But in a house where money ruled, truth meant nothing. It was the day a powerful man's distrust met a poor woman's dignity, and everything changed. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive, and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Now, let me tell you the story of a man who accused and a woman who forgave. Liam's voice sliced through the silence, sharp as the crack of glass. You think I wouldn't notice? My watch is gone. You're the only one who's been in this room. The Patek glimmered under the chandelier, its face fractured from when he had slammed it down. Across from him, Elena stood frozen, her fingers clutching the edge of her apron, her breath trembling. "I swear, Sire, I didn't take anything." Her tone was small but steady, like a flame refusing to die in the wind. "Mrs. Green took a step forward, her heels tapping like punctuation marks on the marble floor. "She's lying. Mr. Hawthorne, I saw her near the study yesterday." Liam didn't turn to her. His eyes stayed locked on Elena. Cold, unwavering. He had built his empire by reading people, and right now, he was certain he was staring at deceit. The air in the room grew dense, heavy enough to crush. Elena's pulse raced, every beat loud in her ears. Her hands were raw from scrubbing floors since dawn, but she kept them still. "He didn't." She tried again, her voice breaking slightly. "He swear I didn't." Liam's jaw flexed. "Call security." He told Mrs. Braggers. "Green, have her things checked before she leaves." The words hit harder than a slap. Elena blinked, her eyes stinging. She had seen this before, the disbelief, the disgust, the unspoken verdict that said, "You don't belong here." She straightened her back, forcing her chin up, even as shame burned in her chest. "I know I can't win your trust," she said quietly, "but I won't confess to something I didn't do." Liam let out a short, bitter breath. Not quite a laugh. He picked up the broken watch, turning it over in his palm. "You're done here. Miss Morris, pack your things." His tone was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that hides a lifetime of disappointment. For a flicker of a moment, something passed across his face, a flash of memory. He couldn't stop. A little boy once stood in another room, listening to his father's voice, saying the same thing about someone else. "Never trust kindness. It's always a lie." The moment vanished as quickly as it came. Mrs. Green nodded and stepped away. Elena remained still, the sound of rain outside filling the space between them. It tapped softly on the windows. Counting down the seconds until her dismissal, she looked at Liam one last time. There was no hatred in her eyes, only exhaustion. If the world would always see her as guilty, she could at least leave with her dignity intact, without another word. She turned and walked out. The door closed with a muted click that echoed louder than any scream. Liam stood there for a long while, staring at the broken watch in his hand. The storm outside thickened, thunder rolling through the hollow house. Something inside him twisted, but he ignored it. He'd learned long ago that doubt was weakness, and weakness had no place in this house. The rain kept falling, steady and rhythmic, like the ticking of a clock that no longer cared who was right. Liam sat alone in his office, replaying the footage over and over again. Every camera in the mansion had been checked twice. No movement, no sign of theft. Elena had done nothing wrong. Yet the absence of proof only fed his suspicion, instead of silencing it. People like her don't exist, he muttered under his breath. No one's that perfect unless they're hiding something. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the screen as if searching for a crack in her calmness. A single gesture that would confirm his doubt, but all he saw was a woman working quietly, folding linens, wiping glass, keeping her head down like she'd been born to disappear. Daniel, his assistant of 10 years, stood by the door, holding a stack of reports. He hesitated before speaking. Maybe she really didn't do it. Sire, maybe you were too hard on her. Liam didn't turn around. You think I don't know people? Daniel, you think I don't know what desperation looks like? He clenched his jaw. Good people don't survive in this world. The ones who smile the easiest always end up being the first to betray you. Daniel lowered his eyes. He had seen this side of Liam before. It wasn't anger. It was fear disguised as control. Liam finally spoke again, his tone quieter. When I was 9, my father hired a maid named Clara. She was kind, the kind of woman who remembered how I liked my cocoa and read to me when I was sick. One night, she kissed my forehead, told me I was special. The next morning, she and the family safe were both gone. He paused, his fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. My father called it a lesson. Never trust kindness. It's a mask. Everyone wants something. His voice broke for just a second before he forced it steady again. I believe that lesson, it built everything you see around us. The company, the empire, the walls. He looked up, eyes cold again. And yet somehow, a maid shows up who doesn't take tips, doesn't ask for favors. And I'm supposed to believe she's just good. No, she's playing a long game. Daniel stepped closer. Or maybe she's just trying to survive. Sire. Liam looked at him, and for a moment, his face softened, then hardened again. I need to know who she really is. I need to see her when no one's watching. Later that night, he opened the safe in his study and pulled out a leather wallet, a silver watch, and a crisp stack of $100 bills held by a gold clip. He placed them neatly on the coffee table, aligning each object with precision. Everything about the setup was intentional, the illusion of carelessness, the trap of trust. He adjusted the hidden camera on the bookshelf, checked the angles, then walked to the sofa. As he sat down, he loosened his tie, unbuttoned his sleeves, and lay back as if exhaustion had claimed him. But his eyes stayed open just long enough to make sure everything looked believable. The wallet slightly open, the money exposed, the watch catching the light just right. Then he closed his eyes and let the silence settle. Daniel entered quietly, uneasy. You're really doing this, aren't you? Liam didn't move. Let's see what she does when she thinks no one's watching. Not when it's easy to be good, but when it costs something. Daniel frowned. And if she proves you wrong, Liam answered without opening his eyes. Then maybe I'll finally learn how to sleep again. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be right. The quiet room seemed to echo with something heavier than suspicion. It was loneliness, dressed as logic, and no one, not even Liam himself, could tell the difference anymore. The house felt different when Elena came back that afternoon. It was too quiet, like the walls were holding their breath. She had come only to pack her things. Nothing more. Mrs. Green had told her she could finish before the evening, and she promised she would leave without a word. She moved through the hallway softly, her worn shoes barely making a sound. Every step echoed her heartbeat, heavy and uncertain. When she reached the living room, she froze. On the table in front of the sofa lay a wallet, a watch, and a thick stack of $100 bills. For a moment, she thought it was a mistake, something left behind in a rush. Then her eyes caught the figure resting on the couch. Liam, his head tilted slightly, one hand hanging loosely over the side. He looked asleep, calm, unreachable, her breath caught in her chest. She didn't dare move. It felt like walking into a trap she hadn't set. Slowly, she stepped closer. Each sound magnified the soft scuff of her shoes, the faint rustle of fabric, the quiet rhythm of her own breathing. She glanced around, searching for something, anything that would tell her what to do, but there was only silence. From the couch, Liam's lashes flickered. Behind closed lids, he watched through the smallest crack of vision. Every instinct in him waited for it, the hand reaching, the greed, the confirmation that his worldview was right. He felt his pulse rise, the mix of anger and anticipation burning through his chest. Elena stood beside the table now. Her eyes lingered on the money, then shifted to the man who had humiliated her hours earlier. She thought about how easily people with power could destroy someone like her, how quickly they decided who was guilty. Her throat tightened, but instead of bitterness, something else filled her pity. He looked so tired, so lonely, even in his sleep. Her gaze dropped to the small silver cross around her neck, the only thing she had left from her mother. The chain had snapped earlier that morning. She held it in her palm for a moment, then quietly placed it beside the wallet, a broken thing beside something whole, a small offering of peace in a room built on suspicion. She glanced at the blanket draped over the armchair. Without thinking, she lifted it and laid it gently across his chest. The movement was slow, careful, almost tender. Her fingers brushed against his hand, and she whispered, barely audible, "You look tired. Sire, I hope one day you rest without fighting everyone." Liam's chest tightened. The words slipped past his armor and went somewhere he couldn't reach. He had expected despite, not mercy. He wanted to open his eyes, to stop her, to speak. But he couldn't move. His throat felt dry. The warmth of the blanket pressed against him felt heavier than any accusation he'd ever given. Elena stood there a few seconds longer, studying him, as if trying to memorize a version of him that wasn't cruel. Then she turned and walked away, leaving the faint scent of soap and dust behind. The door clicked softly. Liam opened his eyes only when the silence settled again. The wallet was untouched, the money still there, but the broken cross lying beside them caught his gaze. He picked it up, feeling the small crack in the metal with his thumb. Something in him cracked, too. He had wanted to prove she was just like everyone else. Instead, she had proven he was the one who couldn't see past his own ghosts. He leaned back, the blanket still over him, the cross glinting in his hand. For the first time in years, Liam Hawthorne didn't feel powerful. He felt small, guilty, and human. Liam sat alone in the dim light of his study, the blue glow from the security monitor washing over his face, the footage replayed in silence, looping again and again. On the screen, Elena moved quietly through the living room, unaware that every breath, every gesture, was being watched. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed. He was ready to see the proof that would justify everything he'd done the test. The accusation, the distance he had built between himself and the world, but it never came. She paused beside the table, the wallet and money in full view. Liam's chest tightened as he waited for her hand to move, for the truth he had already decided on to reveal itself. Instead, he saw her unclasp the broken silver cross from around her neck and place it gently beside the wallet. He leaned closer. Then she picked up the blanket, the one he had left on the chair, and covered him with it. Her voice, soft and steady, filled the speakers. "You look tired. Sire, I hope one day you rest without fighting everyone." Liam froze. The sound of her voice, gentle, sincere, cut through him like nothing else could. He paused the video, staring at her still image on the screen. There was no greed in her eyes, nor calculation, just a kind of compassion he couldn't comprehend. For a man who trusted logic over feeling, this moment was chaos. It wasn't supposed to feel like this, heavy, warm, and unbearable all at once. Daniel stepped quietly into the room, a folder in hand. He stopped when he saw the footage, his expression softening as he understood. He didn't speak right away. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "She didn't take anything, did she?" Liam's jaw tightened. His hand hovered over the keyboard, then pressed play again. Another camera angle, the hallway. Elena passed the garden door, paused near the bench where the old gardener, Mr. Hall, often rested. Liam zoomed in, his pulse quickening. She knelt beside the coat the old man had left behind, slipped something small into the pocket, and walked away. A folded note fell out later when he woke up. "For your medicine, take care." Liam leaned back slowly, eyes stinging. It felt like the air had been knocked out of him. For years, he had built his life around control, mistrust, and suspicion. Now, a woman he had accused of theft had quietly rewritten every rule he lived by. His reflection in the dark glass of the monitor looked foreign, someone smaller, humbled, and human. Daniel closed the folder, the sound barely audible. His tone was gentle, almost reverent. "She wasn't stealing, sire. She was giving." He hesitated, then added softly, "You were wrong about her. Maybe it's not too late to be right about yourself." For a long time, Liam said nothing. He kept watching the frozen image of Elena kneeling beside the gardener's coat, her face calm, her actions pure, without expectation. Daniel gave him one last look, half empathy, half respect, then quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. Liam sat motionless, the silence pressing down around him, shame, awe, and something close to gratitude tangled in his chest. He replayed the moment once more, unable to turn away. The cross, the blanket, the kindness that asked for nothing. He couldn't unsee what he saw. The luncheon was meant to impress investors, not destroy someone's dignity. The long table gleamed with crystal glasses and polished silver, Conversations flowed easily until the woman at the far end stood up, her voice slicing through the laughter. "Excuse me. Someone must have dropped this." She held up a white handkerchief embroidered with two small letters, E.M. Her tone dripped with mock sweetness. "I found it under the chair where Mr. Jack Duval was sitting. It smells of lavender and something else." A few guests chuckled. Others exchanged knowing glances. The air shifted. Suddenly sharp and cruel. Liam looked up from his seat, his jaw tightening. Across the room, Elena froze near the service cart, her hands still gripping a tray. Every head turned toward her. The woman smiled thinly. "How interesting," she said, "that even maids have monograms now. Maybe it's a new strategy to get attention." The laughter grew, low and poisonous. Eleanor's face went pale, but she didn't flinch. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "It's mine, ma'am. I dropped it while cleaning." The woman arched an eyebrow. "Oh, cleaning. Of course." She waved the fabric lightly in the air, "though I suppose some people clean their way into better company." The words landed like slaps. Liam's gaze flicked to Elena. His expression was unreadable, but his silence made the moment worse. Elena felt every eye on her, burning through her skin. She swallowed hard, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I didn't mean to cause a scene. It's just a handkerchief." The woman's smirk deepened. "Just a handkerchief. Dear, in my experience, women who leave these behind rarely do it by accident." A soft murmur rippled across the table. Elena clenched her fists, her throat tightening with the familiar ache of humiliation. For a second, she thought about staying silent, letting the shame pass like before. But something inside her broke. She took a slow breath and looked straight at Liam. "There's a story behind that," she said. "And if you want to believe the worst, that's your choice. But I'm tired of being punished for things I didn't do." Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. "I used to work at a nursing home. One night, one of the patients collapsed. The ambulance was late, so I gave him my blood. It saved his life." The room fell still. Her hands shook slightly, but she kept going. A few days later, someone said a gold ring was missing from his drawer. They searched everything. They found it in the laundry cart I used. Her voice cracked. "I didn't take it. I don't even know how it got there. But no one cared. They just wanted someone to blame." A glass clinked faintly somewhere down the table, the only sound in the room. Elena's eyes glistened. "Since then, when people accuse me, I don't explain. I just leave. It's easier to walk away than to beg someone to see the truth." Her words hung in the air, trembling but clear. For the first time, Liam's composure faltered. The memory of his own childhood betrayal clashed with the truth standing in front of him. He rose slowly, crossed the room, and stopped beside her. The guests watched in silence as he took the handkerchief from the woman's hand. He turned to Elena, his voice low but steady. "You don't have to explain anything else. Not to me." The woman blinked, startled. Liam's gaze cut through her. The conversation that followed was a whisper of apologies and shifting chairs, but none of it mattered. Elena stared at the handkerchief in his hand. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then Liam placed it gently in her palm. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." She blinked, tears finally falling. Not from fear, but from the strange relief of being believed. And for the first time, The room that once suffocated her felt bearable again. Liam's eyes softened as he stepped back. Around them, the guests looked away, uneasy in the face of something they didn't understand: honesty. The day after the luncheon, the house felt quieter than usual. The tension that once filled the halls had faded, leaving behind something gentler, uncertain, like a wound learning how to close. Liam found Elena near the back hallway, organizing supplies as she always did. Her movements calm, deliberate. For a long moment, he just watched her. Then he spoke softly, asking her to walk with him. She hesitated, then nodded. They moved through the corridor and out into the garden. The late afternoon sun cast long ribbons of gold across the stone path. Liam led her toward a small wooden gate, half hidden by ivy. When it creaked open, the air changed. Inside was a smaller garden, untouched by the staff. Wild roses climbed over weathered trellises. The scent of jasmine hung in the air. It was beautiful, but not polished. It felt real. He stopped in the center of the path, his voice keener now. "This was my mother's garden. She loved it here. After she passed, I scattered her ashes beneath that tree." He pointed toward a tall willow near the fountain. "I used to come here to talk to her, but over time, I stopped. I told myself I was too busy. The truth is, I didn't know how to sit here without feeling empty." Elena looked around, her hands folded in front of her. There was something sacred about the space, not because of wealth, but because it carried memory. Liam's gaze stayed on the ground. "I built walls after she died. Around the house, around myself. I thought they'd keep me safe. They didn't. They just made me lonely." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "You made this place feel alive again." She shook her head gently. "Whose don't need life? Sire, people do." Her voice was quiet, but it hit him harder than any truth he'd heard before. He stared at her, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not with defiance, not with kindness. He nodded slowly, the words settling inside him. The breeze moved between them, carrying the faint scent of flowers and earth. For a long while, they stood in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Liam turned toward the willow, his voice barely more than a whisper. "My mother used to say that kindness is the only thing that keeps a house warm after the fire's gone out." Elena smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time to light it again." He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his eyes changed. It wasn't gratitude. It wasn't admiration. It was the first quiet flicker of trust. The sun dipped lower, painting the garden in soft amber light. Neither of them moved. For the first time, the mansion didn't feel like a prison to him. It felt like home. The storm arrived without warning. The first crash of thunder rattled the windows, followed by a sharp gust of wind that howled through the trees. Rain slammed against the glass in relentless sheets, and within minutes, the lights flickered twice before vanishing completely. The great halls of the Hawthorne estate fell into darkness. Only the dim glow from the backup generator in the main corridor remained, casting faint golden pools on the marble floor. Liam stood by the study window, watching branches twist in the wind. He had always found storms comforting, a reminder that even chaos had its rhythm. But tonight felt different. There was something uneasy in the silence between the thunderclaps. Then he heard it, a sharp crash of breaking glass from the kitchen wing. He moved quickly, heart pounding, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark like a narrow blade. When he turned the corner, he saw her. Elena was standing by a broken window, her hands pressed against the frame, rain spraying in through the jagged shards. Wind whipped her hair loose from its braid. She was trying to hold up a dish towel against the shattered glass. Blood trickled down her wrist. Liam didn't think. He crossed the room, grabbed the edge of the towel, and pulled it away from her trembling hands. "You're hurt," he said quietly. She tried to protest, shaking her head. "It's nothing. Sire, I just need to stop the rain." He cut her off, his voice firm but gentle. "Enough. You'll make it worse." He shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it over her shoulders. The scent of rain and cold air clung to her skin. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The storm raged outside, but inside, everything slowed down. He guided her toward the small emergency kitchen near the back. It was the only room with power, lit by a single amber bulb. The counters were cluttered with jars and teacups, and the sound of rain on the roof was softer here, like a heartbeat. Liam opened a drawer, found the first aid kit, and motioned for her to sit. She obeyed. Though her eyes stayed on the floor, he cleaned the cut in silence. The antiseptic stung, and she winced, but didn't pull away. Liam's hands were steady, his movements careful. He had never done this before, taking care of someone like this. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. "After everything that happened, why are you still here?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze followed the flickering light on the wall. When she finally spoke, her words were soft but sure. "Because some people don't need punishment. Sire, they need to be shown love before it's too late." He froze. The sentence landed like a blow to the chest. His throat went dry. She looked up at him, eyes clear despite the fatigue. "You keep everyone at a distance, and you think that keeps you safe. But I think you're just tired of being disappointed." Her words weren't meant to hurt, but they cut through every wall he'd built. He couldn't look away. For a long moment, they sat there in silence. The only sound was the storm beyond the walls and the slow rhythm of their breathing. Then, without a word, Liam reached out. His hand hovered for a second, then rested lightly over hers. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't deliberate. It was simply human. Her fingers trembled but didn't move away. She didn't need to say anything, and neither did he. The storm outside grew louder, but inside that small kitchen, something else began to settle, a fragile calm. The kind that only comes when two broken people stop pretending they're fine. The night of the gala arrived, wrapped in soft elegance. The grand ballroom of the Hawthorne estate shimmered under a canopy of golden light. Crystal chandeliers glowed like captured stars, and the faint hum of a string quartet filled the air. Guests in tailored suits and glittering gowns mingled, laughter blending with the clinking of champagne glasses. It was the kind of night built to impress the world. Yet, behind the perfection of it all, one woman worked quietly, making sure everything ran as it should. Elena stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, her expression calm but alert. She had spent the last week planning every small detail under Liam's trust. Seating charts, catering schedules, sound checks. For the first time since she stepped into the mansion, she wasn't invisible. She belonged. When the guests arrived, she greeted them with a soft smile, her posture steady, her confidence unforced. Liam had told her that morning, "You'll handle everything. I trust you." She had almost cried at those words. From across the ballroom, Liam watched her move between tables, adjusting a centerpiece, whispering directions to the staff, smoothing chaos before it began. There was grace in her quiet command. No spotlight, no applause, just quiet, competent care. And that, he thought, was what true strength looked like. Daniel leaned closer and murmured, "She's different tonight." Liam smiled faintly. "No, she's finally allowed to be herself." As the evening unfolded, the crowd settled. The string music softened, and one of the board members tapped a glass with a fork. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Liam Hawthorne will now say a few words." The applause rose, polite and expectant. Liam stepped onto the small stage, his dark suit perfectly pressed, his expression softer than anyone had ever seen. He waited for the murmurs to fade before speaking. "I've hosted many events like this. I've talked about numbers, profits, and buildings. But tonight, I want to talk about something else." His voice carried through the room, calm and deliberate. "A few months ago, someone came into this house quietly. She had no wealth, not title, nothing impressive on paper, but through simple acts. She reminded me that kindness doesn't need recognition, that sometimes the people who speak the least teach us the most." Elena froze where she stood near the back wall. Her fingers gripped the edge of her clipboard as his words sank in. He didn't say her name, but he didn't have to. Every eye in the room turned subtly toward her. Liam's gaze met hers from across the distance, steady and full of something she couldn't name. He continued, his tone deepening. "True strength isn't in control. It's in compassion. It's the courage to stay gentle in a world that rewards cruelty." That lesson didn't come from books or mentors. It came from someone who asked for nothing but gave more than she realized. A long silence followed. The audience wasn't clapping yet. They were listening. Liam stepped down from the stage, moving through the quiet crowd until he stood before her. The room held its breath. In his hand was a small velvet box. He opened it slowly and revealed a delicate silver pendant shaped like a single lily petal. She recognized it instantly. It had belonged to his mother. "My mother used to wear this," he said softly. "She believed that people who carry light inside them never lose their way." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "You reminded me that she was right." Elena's eyes blurred with tears. She couldn't find words. All she could do was nod, her chest tight with emotion. When he placed the pendant in her palm, it felt warm, alive, like it carried the weight of every moment between them. She whispered a shaky thank you, and he smiled, not as a CEO, not as a man of status, but simply as someone who had finally learned how to see. The guests erupted into gentle applause, some even wiping their eyes. But Elena didn't hear any of it. The world around her faded until it was just him and her, standing in the middle of a room full of strangers, bound by something quiet and true. The letter came on a quiet morning, folded neatly under the newspaper on the kitchen counter. Elena almost missed it until she noticed her name written in elegant handwriting. She wiped her hands on her apron and unfolded it carefully. Inside was a scholarship offer from the Hawthorne Health Foundation. Full tuition, housing, and living stipend. At the bottom, written in ink that slanted slightly to the right, were 7 words that stopped her breath. "Someone finally believed in you. L." For a long moment, she just stared at the page, unable to move. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. All the nights she had spent wondering if kindness was worth it. All the times she had been punished for simply being good, suddenly felt seen. Her hand trembled as she pressed the letter to her chest. This wasn't charity. It was belief. Later that morning, she found Liam standing near the garden gate. He was dressed simply. No suite. No armor of control. The sunlight caught in his hair, and for the first time, he looked at peace. When he saw her, he smiled faintly. "So, you got it." She nodded, holding the letter close. "I don't know how to thank you." He shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll keep going. Don't stop because someone once made you doubt yourself." She looked at him for a long time before speaking. "You taught me something too, that people can change. Even the ones who thought they couldn't." He exhaled slowly, his voice soft. "I didn't change, Elena. I just finally remembered who I was before I stopped believing in people." She smiled, tears still in her eyes. But they were tears of peace now, not pain. When she finally spoke again, her voice trembled with gratitude. "I won't forget what this place gave me, or what you did." He looked down, his tone quiet. "If one day the world feels too heavy again, come home. You'll always have a place here." They stood there in silence for a while, surrounded by the faint scent of morning dew and roses. The moment didn't need words. It was full enough. She stepped closer, hesitated, then reached out to squeeze his hand. His fingers tightened slightly in return. Then she turned toward the road, her small suitcase waiting near the car. The morning light spilled across the gravel, soft and golden. As the car drove away, she looked back once. The mansion stood still behind her, framed by the rising sun, no longer cold or distant. It wasn't goodbye in sorrow. It was a beginning. 6 months later, the Hawthorne estate no longer felt like the same house. The marble halls that once echoed with silence now carried the sound of footsteps, faint laughter, and a life returning to its rhythm. The air smelled different too, lavender and sunlight instead of dust and distance. Every morning, Liam could be found in the garden, sleeves rolled up, tending to the lavender beds he'd planted where his mother's roses used to grow. His hands, once accustomed to contracts and glass, now knew soil and patience. It was a quieter kind of success, the kind that couldn't be measured in numbers. He spoke to his mother sometimes, voice low and gentle. "You were right, Mum. Kindness isn't weakness. It's what keeps the world warm." He didn't expect an answer, but when the wind stirred the lavender, he liked to think she heard him. He kept a small photograph of her on a wooden shelf near the garden door. Beside it, folded neatly, was the handkerchief Elena had embroidered with their initials. He had placed it there the day she left. It stayed as both a memory and a promise. That afternoon, the sun was soft and gold. He was kneeling by the flower bed, trimming wilted stems, when he heard footsteps on the gravel. Turning, he squinted against the light and froze. Elena stood by the gate, her hair longer, catching the sun like silk. She looked different, calmer, surer, but her eyes were still the same, warm brown, he remembered. In her hand was a small travel bag. He rose, slowly, unsure if she was real. She smiled first. "I heard lavender helps the heart heal." He exhaled, half laughing. "Maybe that's why I planted too much." She stepped closer, the sound of gravel crunching softly under her shoes, and reached into her bag. I brought you something. She unfolded a square of fine linen, the edges stitched with silver thread. 2 letters intertwined, L and E. Her voice was steady. Last time, you gave me something that belonged to your family. I thought it was time. I gave something that belongs to both of us. He took the handkerchief, tracing the letters with his thumb. For a moment, he couldn't speak. The scent of lavender drifted between them, wrapping the silence in warmth. When he finally looked up, his eyes met hers, and in that gaze lived everything. Words would have ruined gratitude. Forgiveness. Something like love. You look different, she said softly. Happier. He smiled. Faintly. Maybe I finally stopped fighting ghosts. She nodded, eyes glistening. That's good. We both needed that. They stood side by side, looking over the garden that had once been a graveyard of his grief. The sun lowered slowly, painting their faces in amber light. He turned toward the wooden shelf, where his mother's photo rested. Without a word, he took the handkerchief from his pocket and placed it beside the one she had given him months ago. The initials shimmered faintly under the sun, side by side. Then he looked back at Elena. She was watching him, eyes full of quiet understanding. He smiled again. Smaller this time, but real. Thank you for coming back. She smiled too, her voice barely above a whisper. I never really left. You just had to open the door. They stood there, the fading light brushing their faces, the lavender swaying gently around them. No confessions, no declarations, just peace. A long, silent smile passed between them, as if time itself had softened. The camera of life would pull back, now the two of them framed by the golden sky, the house behind them glowing with warmth. The wind carried the scent of lavender through the air, soft and endless, and the storyteller's voice would return, low and tender, like a truth we all forget until it finds us again. Sometimes, the hardest test isn't learning to trust others. It's learning to forgive yourself for forgetting how. From the day Liam accused her of theft to the moment he learned to trust again, their journey was never about wealth or power, it was about redemption. Elena's quiet kindness melted the walls he'd built, proving that compassion can reach even the coldest hearts. Sometimes, it takes the simplest act of grace to remind us what it means to be human. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below and tell me how it made you feel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Emotional Echoes, where every story heals a little part of the soul. Thanks for listening.